Welcome to episode 117 of the Sports Geek podcast. This week, I chat with Adam Rootman from the Vancouver Whitecaps and Darshan Kayla from Tradable Bits to talk about social campaigns.
Welcome to the Sports Geek podcast, the podcast built for sports digital and sports business professionals. And now, here's your host, currently crafting Facebook ads so your friends will find out about this podcast, Sean Callanan.
Thanks, DJ Joel. Yes, I do spend far too much time analysing and looking in to Facebook ads and how to write the best Facebook ads, but I'm a really big believer in getting deep into the dirt, understanding the tools, and understanding how you can use them to best get results for your team. My name is Sean Callanan from Sports Geek, and I'm the host of the Sports Geek podcast. You may be listening to this via iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, or my favourite podcasting app, Pocket Casts, available on Android and on iOS. You can contact me on sean@sportsgeekhq.com or via most of the social medias. Sean Callanan is my name on Twitter and Snapchat, and also Sean Callanan Speaks on Facebook. I'd love to connect with you and hear more about your experience in the sports business world and what you think of the Sports Geek podcast. This week, I'm chatting with Adam Rootman from the Vancouver Whitecaps about his experience in Vancouver in the MLS and some of the campaigns that they've run out for the Whitecaps and how they've gone about getting that mix. I talked about it at Seed a few years ago about that digital campaign trifecta of engagement, content and data, and sort of getting that mix right, and how they go about using a tool called Tradable Bits. It's a tool that we're currently using on a couple of fronts in running campaigns. And so after the conversation I have with Adam, I also catch up with Darshan Kayla, who's the founder and CEO of Tradable Bits, to talk to him about, one, his background, how Tradable Bits was founded and where it came about, and then also how it can be used in the world of sports and some of the success that we're seeing. I met Darshan at C Conference last year, so good to catch up with both of them on this episode of the Sports Geek podcast. Very happy to welcome Adam Rootman from the Vancouver Whitecaps, Senior Digital Manager there. Welcome to the podcast, Adam.
Thank you very much, Sean. Great to be here.
You are now in season, a couple of rounds in to the MLS. Do you want to take us through what your role is there and what you look after?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm the Senior Digital Manager, and under me I've got a staff of 4. I've got a social media coordinator, a videographer/editor, a motion graphics designer, and a digital specialist. So, I mean, basically everything digital sits within my portfolio. So web, video, social media, email marketing, digital advertising, digital leads acquisitions sits within me, with me and my team. And at the Caps, my area is within the marketing department, and there's another senior marketing manager whom I work quite closely with. And within his team, he's got some marketing coordinators as well as a design team under him. So a lot of the stuff that we work on, we work closely with his team as well. And then I work quite closely with the communications team, where our editorial staff sit for our website. So, yeah, I kind of oversee all things digital.
It's a really good mix, and it's funny when I'm talking to different people of where their digital team fits, whether it's really skewed from on the editorial side, and we are the content producers, or whether it's skewed the other way to marketing and marketing the team and helping sell tickets, and then potentially some others are more commercially focused. But you seem to be quite sort of have a foot in both camps of that marketing and the digital, in the content and communication side of the Whitecaps business?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, whilst the our main writer sits within the communications team, work quite closely with him, and ultimately, the goal of all our digital communications is to sell tickets. So, I mean, ultimately, it is a marketing type of initiative. But my position, I do work quite closely with the communications department, along with all the different departments within the organization, whether it's sales and service and partnerships. It's, digital is one of these spaces that really has their hand in every pot.
Yeah, it's very much a horizontal part of the organisation, because you're serving so many different partners internally and also externally when you're talking about your sponsors and your partners. So, in sort of diving in on that, if you've got your content team doing what is almost what your football hygiene, the match highlights and your reports on the match and that kind of stuff, and then your sphere is really in that fan engagement space, making sure the fans are up and about both on your website and on your social platforms. And then the other part of the equation is, and I'm sure you're not alone in a lot of digital managers get the request, go and get more of that data out of those social platforms. We've got this many fans on Facebook. We've got this many fans over here. How do we start extracting that data? Is that obviously a big driver for you?
Yeah, absolutely it is. And, we're pretty lucky at the Caps. We do have a lot of resources at hand. So, I know some of the other MLS teams, you've got, the digital person that's, doing editorial, they're doing video, they're doing social media, they're looking at on the analytics side of things. We're lucky here that we've got a business intelligence team that will provide a lot of the analytics. So, I have a weekly content meeting that includes, there's probably 12 of us in the room when it comes to creating the content, because, as mentioned, we've got the communications team, we've got people on the marketing side, we've got, our business intelligence team as well. So, there's quite a large group of people that contribute to content, both from editorial side and as well from just a kind of a general fan engagement side.
And I think that stats element, that analytics element, is really important. I mean, if you look at the articles on why Netflix keeps producing all these hit after hits from their content point of view, it's because they're diving into the data, seeing what type of shows and TV shows and movies that people are consuming to know what they go and produce. And sports have that same options. They can look into the analytics, see what content is getting consumed, see what video is getting consumed, see what campaigns are getting consumed, to know that they can continue doubling down and pushing more into that space. So is that the part that your data analysts sort of help you frame your content?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've every week, there's some sort of contribution from that team just to kind of push the content in one direction or another. For example, Canada played Mexico at BC Place a little while back, and after the match, it was noted that it was some of our most engaged content of the entire year. So right off the bat, we're like, okay, let's ride this wave of nationalism, and let's try to get some as much Canadian content as possible. And our U20s were playing over in England, and there was they beat England 2-1, and so we made sure to get some of that footage to get out on our channel. So yeah, it's always driven by some form of analytics for sure.
And from a campaigns point of view, because the content is one piece, but that piece of running campaigns, having a bit of fun with your fans, that kind of thing. You guys have been using Tradable Bits for a while now. What are some of the ways that you use that to both capture data, but then also just to be in that space of having fun with your fans?
Our most successful activation using the platform was actually during the World Cup. We had a series that we called the World Pup Predictor, and we had this little cute lab puppy that we shot a video series with, and every time there was a matchup, team versus team, the pup, we had two different bowls of food, whether England was playing Argentina, and the pup would actually predict who was gonna win by whatever bowl of food they went to, and the fans were able to make their own predictions, and then we set it up with this whole series of fans versus pup, who was the best predictor of the outcome of the World Cup. So we used a feature of Tradable Bits called Tug of War for that one, where the fans were able to predict a win or a loss or a draw, and that was our most successful activation using the platform. We generated a number of new entries into the system during that period of time, which is great, because you've got something like the World Cup. You're getting to that wide funnel market that you don't necessarily get to on the day in and day out. You're appealing to that sports fan that's starting to gain interest in soccer. So it was that was the most successful activation we had using Tradable Bits.
And I think that the key there is not. And I'm a fan of tools. People. I'm always telling people this tool can do this tool can do that, but it's not just about how you use the tool. It's how you integrate the tool and everything that you did. Because it's not like you just ran the Tug of War, which is a great little campaign which gets people to pick a side. You integrated that with a piece of with a content piece that that had the Labrador picking the bowl, that told people what it is, and then you drove them into the fans making their selection. And so it's when you get the campaign side of it, then feeding the content and sort of creating that feedback loop in what you're doing. I think that's one of the vital components.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I agree with that 100%. You're never going to get, good engagement on just something that's standalone. You need to support it with, video and social. And we had editorial as well. We really had worked with all our different touch points that just pushed to the platform. So, yeah, absolutely. It makes a big difference, all the content surrounding the contest, for sure.
And the thing is, you were talking about before about pitching something that's a bit like off centre, because getting Whitecaps fans voting on Brazil versus Netherlands is not something you go, well, that's in our core fan audience, but it gets you knew there was wide appeal of the World Cup. You knew football fans were engaged with it, but it allowed you to reach a wider audience and start filling that top of that funnel for you guys.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then so taking that sort of those campaigns that you've done over time to start building up that fan information of what fans are doing, what they like and don't like, and also some of their preferences based on some of the campaigns that you've run. The next step was stuff around the digital advertising and the marketing using those audiences. Do you want to talk through about, because you sort of talk about the ticketing options that you're doing? And I recently spoke to Dennis Yu, who does the stuff who does some of the Facebook advertising for the Golden State Warriors, and he talked a lot about building up those audiences that make it that are the most viable for you to then make a purchase to make an offer to. You were able to do that with the Ticketmaster integration via Tradable relatively successfully. You want to take us through how that worked?
Sure. I mean, we're not diving deep into kind of fan preference and fan behavior with a lot of this data. I mean, we're looking at through the campaign with Tradable Bits, we looked at the amount of data that we had within Tradable Bits through all our contesting over the years, and we're combining that data with our ticket purchasing data as well. So, we're then from that created a couple of different campaigns, to whether it is our subscription packages that we're advertising, or just single match tickets. So, anyone who had bought 2+ tickets, then we're feeding them ads on 5-packs, about half seasons and season tickets, and anyone with either one ticket or none at all, then we're feeding targeted ads just to our single match tickets. So that was kind of the basis of the campaign, and
the thing is, I guess the advantage is because you've got the hooks into Ticketmaster. If someone goes and buys that ticket, then your audiences are automatically getting updated. Their friends are getting updated, and it becomes a bit more laser focused in the targeting. Rather than, these are people who visited our site. It's, you've purchased a ticket, you've moved from, you're a 2, 3, 4, 4-game buyer. We're now moving you into a different type of pack. So it just sort of brings a bit of automation to those audiences that get built.
Yeah, absolutely. That was a big advantage for sure. I mean, especially if there's teams that don't have a lot of internal resources, and whilst you can kind of update all of that stuff manually through Facebook, it is quite time consuming if you're looking at continually downloading lists of ticket buyers and then uploading it to Facebook. It's quite time consuming. So the automation was a great benefit for sure,
and the fact that it's the quick turnaround, because if I go buy a ticket and then my friends who also are Whitecaps fans or have also participated in a campaign, they will start seeing those ads within an hour or 2 hours of me buying that ticket. So it becomes far more relevant, because I might then see them at a bar or whatever to say, hey, I'm going to the Whitecaps game, and then straight away you're right in there saying, hey, you should be buying a ticket as well. So I think there's some real power in that side of it as well. Yeah,
absolutely. And the more targeted you can get with your Facebook audience, the better, because ultimately you want your fans to be engaging with your ad, which gives it more social context, which then gives it then Facebook algorithm will show it more. So it's a huge benefit to have a targeted group, because then you've got that social context, you've got the right fan base who wants to engage with your ad. So it's great to really get down and target those fans.
Yep. And it is that is sort of a bit of the sweet science around that, is if you get the audience right, as well as the copy and the offer, that it definitely determines the cost that you have to spend to get the results. So getting that laser focus on your audience is super important.
For sure.
And so, from a Whitecaps point of view, what are some of the things you're looking to do in the season ahead?
I mean, for us, ultimately, we're looking to increase engagement off all our social channels. So. Sorry, Sean, I'll get to interrupt here for 1 sec. Do you want me to speak to more kind of broader digital goals, or more from the advertising side of things?
Either or.
Okay. All right. So, we're looking to increase engagement across all our social channels. So we're looking as much as possible to just get more rich and and rich content and increase the quality of our content as well. And one of the new additions to our team is a motion graphic designer. So we are putting a lot of focus on video this coming year, and we're slowly releasing a number of new series that we filmed, and we're really kind of putting a lot of resources into really high quality video content. So that's going to definitely be a focus for 2016. And
on the video piece, is it something you're looking for in that short form consumable piece, or are you looking for something more in that mini documentary type of series? Because there's so many different facets of video that teams can go with. Where do you think you're going to head?
Well, I think it's both. To be, that's the easy answer is both. But I would say the majority of our content is going to be more that kind of quick consumable type of content. But again, we were speaking about analytics before, and last year our highest performing content piece was a 10-minute video with Kakuta and Ka. So it's the long form videos do get a lot of engagement if it's good content. So I'm kind of the mind that if you're producing good content, it's kind of irrelevant how long the video is. If it's a great video, people are going to watch it. So that's the approach that we're taking here. But the majority of the stuff is that kind of quick hit type of content, really fun, shareable type stuff. But we are producing a number of long form video pieces as well. So that's part of the strategy for this year.
Yeah, both is a completely acceptable answer, because really both just means what platform do they best live on. Like the short form stuff does fit better in the Facebook video space, but it can be a teaser into people consuming it on your app or on your website, and there are fans, and again, when you're looking at your segmentation of all your fans, there are fans that do want to dive in and see that 10-minute video or longer. I come from the world of podcasting, and I think there's a lot of teams that aren't using the long form that podcasting offers enough. Because it is a platform that fits within a commute and while you're going to the gym and that kind of thing. So, the length thing is more of a platform where it's best going to excel, and how you're going to use it. Because again, if you use short form, if you use short video, 10 to 15 seconds on Facebook, it can be another great audience builder for you to push out. So yeah, definitely the push is for more resources into that space, but I'm really always interested in understanding what people are looking for, whether they're looking for doing short versions of 30 for 30 style really narrative storytelling investigative pieces, or whether they're doing fun light player personality pieces, those kind of things. It's there's a lot of options and scope in the video space.
For sure. I mean, and for the longer form videos that we're doing, we'll create teaser content that we'll put out on social, that we'll push to our site, that will house the longer form video. So, we kind of do a combination of both, even for the long form videos.
Yep. And that's part of the sort of going back before about the pure content person, the writer. It's part of their job now to know how their craft is best consumed on all the different platforms. So knowing that there's the grab that's going to go on Instagram or Vine or those kind of things, or Facebook, as well as here's the whole project and how it lives in its entirety.
Yeah, for sure.
So what I am trying to do, and I sometimes forget, is finishing off with my five questions to get to know you a little bit more before we wrap up the interview. What was your first sports event you ever attended?
It actually was a soccer game, even though I grew up in Canada. I was visiting England when I was 7, and I've got some relatives that live in London, and their home team is Watford. So we went out and we saw a Watford game out in North London. So, that kind of started my love affair with soccer, I have to say. So, it's not a typical North American answer, but it was actually a soccer match in London.
Oh, well, I'm sure there's some people that are still waiting to go to go into a football match in London. So I'm sure there's some people that are very jealous. Your favourite food that you've ever eaten at a sports event?
Well, I'm now a West Coast guy, and we have lots of options at BC Place with the Caps, and I like the sushi. What can I say? I like the raw fish, so I would say that's my favorite meal at a sporting event.
Yeah, I don't see that as a sporting event food, but as stadiums are changing. Stadiums definitely are changing. So, in the morning, you reach over to your phone. What's the first app you open up in the morning?
The first one I open up in the morning is probably Facebook. I really kind of treat Facebook as my news feed. So, getting updates from my friends in terms of, whose birthday it is that day, all the way to all the different, media outlets that I follow, along with all the different soccer clubs around the world I follow. So, Facebook is definitely, the first one I open up. Just to be able to, get that content I want to consume first thing in the morning.
What's your take? It was recently reported in the last week or so around that Facebook's concerned about people are sharing less of their stuff, and I guess to a certain point, Facebook's been too successful in making Facebook our news feed, our personal newspaper, because the publishers are going so well and people are sharing content, but they're not sharing their personal life as much. Do you see that in your feed and personally?
Yeah, absolutely. I rarely share that much on Facebook when it comes to my personal life, and I think also less and less I actually get my friends' content within my feed, and it mostly is from a lot of the brands that I follow. So I can see how that's a big concern for Facebook. And, when it comes to my group of friends, in terms of sharing content, I would say Instagram is probably the channel of choice with my group of friends anyways for keeping each other up to date. So I definitely see it, and certainly it's indicative on how I use the platform. So I see that as a big concern for Facebook.
Yeah, it will be interesting to see what they do. I mean, we keep getting reminded via the On This Day of the stuff we used to do, and yeah, it's almost highlighting to you that you don't share as much. So I'm sure they'll do some tweak in some form to get people to share more stuff. As anyone that you think the Sports Geek podcast listeners should follow, and why, whether it be a Twitter follow or a blog or an article, a writer or someone that they should follow?
There's John Loomer. He's an expert in Facebook advertising, and I often follow him and just to get some insights on strategies around advertising. Yeah,
I know John. I met him a couple of times at conferences, and yeah, he's on the bleeding edge of the changes around Facebook and the ads component. So yeah, he's a good resource. And hopefully we haven't gone and preempted this, but what is your social media platform that is your MVP?
Well, I mean, I just talked about it in terms of Instagram. I used to be a professional photographer, so I love the photo. So from a personal standpoint, it's Instagram for myself, and also from a club standpoint, out of all the different platforms, that's the one we actually get the most engagement on. So I'm a huge Instagram fan.
And so, were you filled with rage with the talk that the edge rank and an algorithm's going to come to Instagram, or are you embracing it because you know that the Whitecaps produce great content, so the fans will actually see and engage your content more?
Yeah, I'm okay with it. I do believe that our content is great, and certainly with the engagement numbers we get on the platform, I'm not too worried about it. I think that the algorithm will be such that they'll continue serving up our content.
Yeah, I mean, I think for mine, people forget what Facebook was like before they brought in the algorithm and the clickbaity articles and all of that kind of stuff, and they just went and said, no, we're not showing those anymore, and they just completely vanished from the feed, and the experience became better. So I think you'll see less health inspirational quotes and entrepreneurial quotes and posts that just repost themselves multiple times. Like that's because that's filling the Instagram feed. So I think it's a good thing. Adam, where can people find you on the internet? Adam on Twitter.
Yeah, it's Adam Rootman on Twitter.
And you're on LinkedIn and any other platforms that you're on. Are you Adam Rootman on Instagram as well?
My feed is not public, my personal feed, but you can. It's Adam Rootman on Twitter and Adam Rootman on LinkedIn.
Terrific. Yeah, I turned my Instagram feed on private for a while when they were having all those bots come in and befriend me that I just didn't want to befriend. Thank you very much for being on the podcast. Hopefully I will get to a Whitecaps game soon. I know Lenny at Tradable keeps saying I should come up to Vancouver. I've been to Canada, but I have not yet ventured to Vancouver. Everyone says it's a beautiful part of the world.
It absolutely is, and definitely get in touch if you're out on the West Coast, and I'll treat you to the game.
Okay. Cheers, mate.
Okay, thanks, Sean.
Thanks again to Adam Rootman. You can send Adam a tweet, tell him that you're listening to the podcast, and if you want to ask him a question about things like the World Cup puppy predictor. And also, as part of this episode, I also caught up with Darshan Kayla from Tradable Bits. Very happy to follow up that conversation with Adam with Darshan Kayla, founder and CEO of Tradable Bits. Welcome to the podcast, Darshan.
Hey, glad to be here.
Good to catch up. We met at SEAT last year. I just want to get a bit more background on Tradable and get a little bit of background on your background and how it came to be and how your experience came to come to Tradable, because you've got a sports background with some involvement in the 2010 Winter Olympics.
Absolutely, yeah. It's interesting. We tend to, from my past experiences and so on, I've been able to kind of capitalize on previous successes and so forth. So, my background is, computer electrical engineering, and so built circuit designs and high-powered systems and so on, and telecom became my transitioning point. In the, early 90s and really the 2000s, the infrastructure of the internet was really the crux of the major changes. Everything has been transitioning to this new world of digital. The last thing that I was working on was I was director of Olympic services for Bell Canada at the 2010 Winter Olympics Games. And it was, one of the many first things that happened associated with digital. One, we were broadcasting in 120 different broadcast centers internationally, served over 3 billion viewers, and it had to be flawless games, and all of that was through technologies that I was able to work on during my youth, all the way down to my 30s when I started building the infrastructure for delivering the games. And the most interesting part, you talk about where did Tradable Bits come from. And the whole concept is, the digital world is all bits and bytes. And one of the things that I found very interesting during the games was that everybody had an opportunity to share their experience. And it's probably one of the first time that I've ever seen, made possible because the bandwidth was available. You had iPhones, you had all kinds of digital mechanisms that you could take photos that are pretty good quality and distribute them. There was, Facebook, there was Twitter, there was a lot of different social networks that will build on top of the consumer world to easily, express what they're experiencing. And so that's where, Tradable Bits after the Olympics was really one of the most exciting part because, one, building the infrastructure, making sure that there was flawless games and everybody can, still send photos, and while security still had access to everything else, the fact that this world was all about now and then everybody wants to be part of it.
Yeah, and I mean, like you just said there, as the bandwidth allowed and the technology grew, 2010 to 2016, a lot has changed. The real focused on, as I would say, data, as my US friends would say, data. That big data picture and having better understanding of your fan, and the fact that sharing and liking and all the activities that they're doing is giving marketers all that information, and that's sort of the heartbeat of what Tradable is in learning more and more about your fan in everything that you go about doing.
Exactly. Yeah. So when we built the platform, it was 5 years ago. Tradable Bits platform was in infancy. No different than social networks were at that time when everybody was just trying to push content into the space. And really, if you look back, it's kind of like I take it the same format where you have an infrastructure that was built to prepare for this massive bandwidth. Applications are being built to sustain the requirements in that infrastructure. But, really this digital social component had to appear. And so now you've got Snapchat, you got Facebook, you got Twitter. This has all the essence of, different types of things that we are in humanity. So it's kind of an interesting way that some of these social networks are more centered, specifically tied to, maybe Facebook, more private content, where, Instagram's more public, more visual, and Twitter is more real-time, kind of what's happening right now, and Snapchat's more kind of a semi-private, unique way to kind of communicate. So a lot of different tools are available today because of that. And what's important, though, is that how do you then get to know an individual? Because that's really the magic. So when you get into a scenario where you meet somebody, you go to a party and you meet somebody, you start talking, and there's a whole group of people around you. Well, that's like a social network. It's no different, right? So the way I see it is that, you got a group of people, they're all the Facebook network because they're talking about more private things because they're kind of all friends. And then there's a Twitter network. Maybe there's a different group altogether. But when you go to that party and you jump around, you start to get to know individuals and who they are. And Tradable Bits is really just that component. It allows the platform allows you to kind of connect with each of these particular networks and get the best part of that network. And so they kind of help you understand the individual fans. And why is it important to know the individual fans? It's because personalization. And you talk about data. We're talking about all these different things. It's just all numbers and means nothing unless you can make something personal about it. And so Tradable Bits platform it allows you to kind of get everything from things they're like, last interactions, who are they friends with, how much product they bought, did they go to the last game, are they speaking positively about you? All of those particular components is important because when Darshan Kaler logs in or Sean logs into a website or a mobile app, you want to be able to present that individual with some unique things that you know about them to personalize that experience.
Yeah, and that's where that fan-based sort of marketing ethos that sort of drives what you're trying to do really comes from. I really like, I was going through some of your stuff and been working with you guys. I've been describing Tradable Bits as a bit of a Swiss Army knife tool for sports marketers because it's not a one-stop shop. It's got these few different components, that work for different results. Like speaking to Adam at the Whitecaps on the ticketing side and helping them build out audiences and then getting those conversions from a ticketing point of view. But you've got the game day presentation piece, the ability to do sponsorship activations and campaigns for sponsors. So it's not just a one trick pony, if you will. It does have that Swiss Army knife feel to it.
Yeah, absolutely, and it matters, right? Because when we talk about a lot of these different things, the way you interact with the fans, each interaction matters, right? It has some value to it. So, with the Whitecaps, when we did the customize, now for them, they've been using the Tradable Bits platform for several years. So their fan base information on how people are connected and everything else is pretty vast. And so when we integrated Ticketmaster data into as part of the fan base marketing, we were absolutely surprised that the fan CRM that where people primarily connected, shared their data, and all that other stuff, and then Ticketmaster was this third-party data. And once we mashed it together and we put our algorithms in place, we found almost 70% match. And that's kudos to the Whitecaps, because they've done a tremendous job of really engaging their audience base set. And here they were just primarily using Tradable Bits, prior to that integration with Ticketmaster, primarily for engagement and connectivity and understanding who these audiences, including sponsorship activations and so forth.
And so yep.
Yeah, go ahead.
And so that is the thing. It's not just a matter of taking a couple of different buckets of data and mashing it all together and saying, "Oh, good, we can now sell tickets." It is a longer game in that Adam and his team at the Whitecaps were running different discrete campaigns. Some might be for voting for a man of the match. Some might be for a sponsor promotion. Every time they ran something, they got a richer and richer picture of both the individual person and then their overall fan base. And so it was that sort of solid foundation that developing of that audience made, when they turned on the Ticketmaster integration from a sales point of view and ran some campaigns, and that it had a really high success rate. So it's that you can't just, it's not just a matter of turning the switch on and saying everything works. It's a process that you've got to follow.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And and the interesting part about sports is that sponsors, obviously want to get the best bang for their buck, but in reality, they're kind of funding you to get to know your fan base if you do it right? And it's not just about an email grab or anything else, because if you're finding a way to connect with the fans and someone else is sponsoring it, whether it's Alaska Air or Pepsi or whoever, it's an opportunity for that particular vendor to be associated with a good team. But really, at that time, you can actually create some unique ways to get to know your fans alongside with someone else paying for the buck, for that particular activation. And just to kind of add to what kind of activations are important, it's not about just getting an email address. It's about understanding why that person is interested in participating. In some cases, it's easy. Yeah, I'm going to give you, tickets, and that's pretty quick. But if there is, a man in the match or any of these type of things, even for example, some of the teams that we deal with, the Trailblazers, where they're trying to understand who likes certain types of players, is so important, because that's a unique way you can personalize your communication with that particular audience base set, especially when you're dealing with tens of thousands of people. You want to start putting them in the proper buckets. And so with Fan CRM in our product, it's not a scary, big CRM product or anything like that. But it's not to replace any existing CRMs if you already have one. Think of it as a color commentary. It's no different than somebody sitting there watching a game and telling you all about this individual. In this case, it's just the reverse. You're sitting there talking about each fan. Well, there's Sean sitting on, seat so-and-so and brought in 5 other friends. That's important.
Yep.
Right? And so that's really what we're trying to get down to.
I just wanted to, so on the Ticketmaster integration in how it does work, in that it connects the Ticketmaster information to the fan CRM. How does it work when, sort of take us through the scenario, I'm in your team's CRM and I go and buy a ticket for the game. What are the processes that happen behind the scenes that help help get the results that Adam got into making sure that those ads are then seen by the right people? What are some of the things that happen behind the scenes?
So, when you take a look at this thing, you need the proper connections. I've heard it a couple of times referred to as plumbing. You need the proper plumbing to make this thing happen. So, the pipes that we have with Ticketmaster is a unique integration. We have what we call an API integration with them. It's totally unique in that most people that do Ticketmaster integration in some format has an ODBC or a database integration, and they're getting data, kind of like a lump sum of data, and then God forbid you don't know how to deal with that data, or you do, and you're just trying to mash it all up. Ours is a bit of a different scenario. We directly have API access to Arctics, which is really the CRM component of the Ticketmaster side, and so we have a two-way communication with that. Now, primarily, when someone buys a ticket, we know that someone just bought a ticket. Our fan CRM goes and says, "Oh, this is Sean, and Sean just bought 4 tickets for the next game match. And oh, by the way, Sean has 20 other friends that are also connected, and 3 of them also bought tickets. So maybe one of these folks are going to be going to the game as well, right?" So what we found is that most people will buy one batch of tickets and then bring their buddies along. Or a family, So certainly it's always a group scenario. And the most interesting part about that is that when you're doing advertising, social is very different than Google search, right? So Google dominates the search industry today. So and search works in 2 major things: relevant and recent, right? And so that means, I want to go to Hawaii, and voila, Google shows you hotels, flights, you name it. So Google knows it's relevant, it's recent, and these are the things that you're interested in. Social works a bit more differently because it's not primarily where you do a search. Even though you will do that once in a while, it's not typically. You fall into a feed and then you start scrolling and so forth. So Facebook tries the best they can to give you content that is more relevant and recent. So they do that in a couple of different ways. One way is that it takes a look. If you have a pixel tracker, it knows that, hey, you went to this particular website recently and so on. And so maybe the content that, if you like this page, then that content may show up because it's relevant and recent. But when you're doing an ad, Facebook doesn't know you have a next game match or you have a special match that's coming up. So you have to kind of, bring this all together. And so you want to give Facebook the best opportunity of providing the most relevant and recent. So for us, the way we do it is when someone buys a ticket, we immediately know that, hey, this is relevant. Sean just bought a ticket. This is recent, just right now. So let's make sure that we remove Sean from the ad strategy that we currently have right now, where we're telling people to buy the next game match tickets because Sean just bought. But let's see if we can target Sean's friends. So the way to do that is through a lookalike audience and everything else. So, we have a batch set that identifies these are all the people that have bought tickets already. These are the ones, and as soon as you buy a ticket, you get added onto that bucket. And then there's an audience base that generates a lookalike of that particular audience inside Facebook, which breaths out to potentially a regional location with US, Canada, Australia, and so on, where you're trying to sell a particular batch of tickets within the region. And so when that happens, what we've found is a huge conversion rate, because it's more relevant and recent. So as soon as you buy a ticket, you may go to the pub tonight and say, hey, Saturday I'm going to go watch this game. I got my tickets. And someone else is scrolling through Facebook and they see that particular ad. They're more likely to click. And we've seen success all the way up to 15 to 21% conversion rate increase, and we've seen huge multipliers when we start tracking direct conversion all the way to offline conversions. This is something else that's totally different, where since we have direct access to the Ticketmaster data, we can actually go and take a look at the audience base set that we've created and match those to the people that bought tickets, and then see, which of these people actually ended up converting. So there's some real big mathematics that happen in the background. But at the end of the day, you have 3 major components. You need an audience maker. Think of that. That's the fan CRM. It needs everything. You need the end component, which is really Ticketmaster. This is where you buy the tickets, or it could be a merchandise site or whichever else. So it's an e-commerce site, and then the source where you're targeting these particular audience, they have to be, in this case, Facebook, or it could be Twitter, any social context where you're trying to make sure that your ad that you're showing is shown to the certain group of people at the right time, and removed at the right time as well.
And that's the thing. I guess that's the super relevancy piece. The fact that you're alerted that I've bought a ticket, and that you know that 50 of my friends have also part of the system, and if they're automatically served up with an ad within, an hour of me buying a ticket, there's more likelihood of, like you said, I'm either talking at the pub or even saying on my social channels I'm heading to the game, and then bang, your friends and people like you are starting to see the ad, as opposed to just doing the offer, the remarketing and targeting tactics that they've currently got. You're not doing it off that super relevant information of the ticket sale.
Yeah, and exactly, and even some of the the things that we did for the Whitecaps, ads didn't even look like ads, because we knew that we needed to target a certain group of people. In some cases, if it's an early ticket match type of thing and there's not enough ticket buyers yet, we may target everybody just to kind of get it started and then start petering it off afterwards. But at the end of the day, it's about trying to get that organic lift associated with that ad. Because if you get that organic lift, you're not paying for that, right? That's a freebie. So it's not about, hey, we got a next game match, here's the ticket price and all that stuff. No, it's not about that. It's about, if we know there's a particular team that's coming in that's a rivalry, or there's a good player on the other team, and then to rile up the local fans, there's an ad that we can conjure up that says, hey, you know what, so-and-so, let's, take them down, or whatever it is. Something unique that's highly engaging, where people will comment, share, and so on. But then we throw in and make sure that there's a conversion pixel tracking to that. It's magic. It just makes it so much more powerful. And so in the end, instead of spending 10 times more money to reach the same amount of audience, we're only spending 1/10 of the ad budget and getting between, I think, 60 to 80 times return on the ROI. It's just amazing.
Yeah, and I think that's the difference between standard, or I might even say bad, Facebook marketers and advertisers and good ones, is understanding that a well-crafted ad hitting up the right people will get that organic lift, which effectively says that the cost of that ad goes down, because Facebook wants to promote great content, and if that great content happens to be an ad, they're fine. And understanding the nuances of the copy, who's getting targeted, the style of post, like that's, to me, that's some of the secret sauce of the Facebook ad stuff. And you need those components of being able to target the right people to be able to get that, to tick all the boxes, so you get that great paid post that gets all this organic reach.
Yeah, and it's funny. I kind of put this into some context. And this is my, the visualization of this. Going back to that party scenario where, you go to the party and you're sitting there with a bunch of your friends, you're talking about an activity next game, or, how was that, that was a great score or not, everything, And then all of a sudden someone just hops in and says, hey, there's ticket matches for blah, blah, blah. You're like, totally out of context. Like, and you're like, who is this guy? Who invited them? Like, is there any way that we can kick this guy out? So, so it has to fit perfectly. And to make that happen, fit perfectly, you got to know the audience.
Yep. Well, thank you very much, Darshan. How can people find you on Twitter? D. Kaler, is that your Twitter handle? Have I got that correct?
That's correct, yeah. D. Kaler on Twitter. And certainly you can find us at TradableBits.com. And on Facebook, we're /Tradable. And, Instagram, we're also TradableBits.
And I'll have links from this episode, from my interview with Darshan and Adam, to a white paper that you guys have done about fan-based marketing. So if you want that, you can get that from the show notes.
Awesome. Thanks, Sean.
Thanks, mate.
Sign up for Sports Geek News at sportsgeekhq.com/sign up now.
Thanks again to Adam Rootman and Darshan Kaler, D. Kaler, K-A-L-E-R. Please send them a tweet. Tell them that you've listened to this episode. And if you've got any questions about either the Whitecaps or Tradable Bits, send them a note and tell them that you're listening and you want to know more. Question of the podcast: what content and campaigns are you developing audiences with? And for me, the key bit there is the content and campaigns. Too many times am I seeing campaigns being rolled out and left to their own devices, when the real key element of great campaigns is integrating content pieces that continue to pique the interest of your fans. And so in Adam's case, the cute videos of the puppy and the predicting the winners fed people into the Tradable Bits campaign, where people were putting in their entry fees. If it's a pick'em type contest, how can you integrate that into your previews? If it's a vote player of the game, how can you integrate that into one promoting it in the post match review and then calling back to it in the article that says you did it? So it is this idea of content supporting these micro campaigns that helps you build out these audiences. And we know from our discussion with Dennis, you talking about the Golden State Warriors tactics, it's all about developing those audiences. And that's the piece that Darshan was talking about, the ability for those audiences to be then further leveraged with the campaigns, and then doing things like the Ticketmaster integration, where someone buys a ticket, and because you've got their data, their friends start seeing those ads, and you start getting those recency and relevancy type of campaigns. So, like I said earlier in the show, I've been working with Tradable Bits with Lenny Go, who I met at SEAT in San Francisco. So what I'm going to do is hosting a webinar with Lenny, where we're just going to talk through different campaigns and a bit of best practice and how the product can be used. And I'll probably be going through more so on the side of how these campaigns can be sold, because it's not just about the tool. It's about how your team can go about commercializing the use of that tool. A lot of the work that we've been doing recently is building out pitch decks for commercial teams, so they can we can do this campaign and this campaign and this campaign. So if you are interested in that webinar, you can go to sportsgeekhq.com/Tradable Bits. There'll be a big sign on the front page of SportsGeek HQ, and you can pick one of the times to book in, where Lenny and I will be doing a bit of a Tradable Q&A and sort of taking through some campaign best practice. And because I'm a big one on, and I've always used the phrase, because I come from the IT world of eating your own dog food. And I don't know if you've ever heard that expression. It's an expression when you're on a product development team in an IT space and you're building out a product. And one of the key drivers when running those teams was to get the developers to be using the product, hence the term eating your own dog food. But I'm going to change that phrase up. Thanks to Stephen Sammartino, a good friend of mine. He reframed that phrase for me because he didn't like the idea of eating dog food. And so he has now reframed that proposition of drinking your own champagne, which sounds far more palatable. So again, if you're building out a tool or building out a campaign or producing your own content, you should be consuming it to see what the experience is like. So in that vein of drinking my own champagne, in working with guys like Tradable Bits, I've set up a Tradable Bits campaign to get your help as Sports Geek podcast listeners and people working and practitioners in the sports business. I want you to help start a movement to help me decide who should be my next big Sports Geek podcast guest. Mark Cuban was on episode 62, and it was an absolute thrill to spend 45 minutes talking to a sports owner and billionaire. And so what I've put down some of the nominations, both personal nominations, and I've also taken nominations in the Sports Biz Slack for who I should interview. A lot of these actually have been listed in my goals statement. If you go to seancallanan.com/goals, has a list of things that I would like to do. It's called the Anything Is Possible list. And some of these guys have been listed there. So I've got names like Magic Johnson, Steve Ballmer, another sports geek, Bill Simmons as a podcast guy and a media, and looking at that media world. I'd love to spend time chatting with Bill Simmons, Shaquille O'Neal, again as a developing media mogul, podcast guy, and now business owner. So there's some of the people that I've listed. Please go in to sportsgeekhq.com/guest vote. And please put in your nomination or vote for who you want to see on the podcast. Who would you like me to fire questions to? I'd love to see if it creates a little bit of momentum. And part of it is going to be to create the social proof. I will definitely be pointing some of these names to that vote to say, well, this is what the people want. We'll see if it helps me land that next big fish as a guest on the podcast. So that's sportsgeekhq.com/guest vote. And while you're doing it, you'll get to see Tradable Bits live and in action. So until next week, my name is Sean Callanan from Sports Geek, and if you were following my Snapchat recently, you would have seen my trip to Adelaide Oval to check out the Adelaide Crows game and then the A-League Grand Final, and I shared those snaps on my Snapchat, Sean Callanan, and then replayed them, and I'll go through how I went about doing that soon on Sports Geek HQ, and there's no doubt about it. The Adelaide Crows fans absolutely love Eddie Betts. This sounds the game comes from the hill as Eddie lines up for goal. So listen to that for the end of the episode. And until next week, my name is Sean Callanan from Sports Geek, and you've been listening to the Sports Geek podcast.
Like the Sports Geek podcast? Find us on facebook.com/sportsgeek. Want to understand Facebook advertising options? Go to sportsgeekhq.com/FB ads. Please leave a review on iTunes. Go to sportsgeekhq.com/iTunes.